About 8 years ago, I got a call from a friend who told me that he had been working with a co-founder on a fledgling product, and they were now at the point where they felt like they needed someone to come help figure out and grow the business. As I listened to that, I found out that this product was Lucidchart. For those of you who may not be familiar with it yet, Lucidchart is a visual workspace which combines diagramming, think process flows, org charts, network diagrams, with data and collaboration, all built for the purpose to help people see more about their work, to see more about their business, because we believe when you can see more about your business, you can know more and do more. Now, since that time that I joined these friends in the basement, we've seen a lot of growth. I've seen from 4 to 500 employees, from 20,000 registered users to more than 20 million, and from $1,000 in cash sales my first month to well past 50 million in revenue today. And one of maybe the more unique parts of that is that we've done it by burning very little of the capital we've raised along the way. And people often are curious about that. How did you do that? What are some of the tips and lessons that you've learned along the way? And so I want to share a little bit of that today. Before I dive into some of the lessons, though, I want to talk about when is freemium the right business model. Our model has changed a fair amount over the years. When we first started in the basement, it was a pure freemium self-serve model. Over the years, we've layered on sales and customer success and built more of a freemium to enterprise model. But freemium, nonetheless, has always been at the core. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's always the right business model. And I think maybe first, it's worthwhile looking at some numbers from Jason Lemkin that he put out a few years ago, I think, when he was doing the thought experiment of what does it take to build a $100 million revenue business off a traditional freemium model. And the numbers he came to are basically this. You've probably got to attract about 50 million users, who most of them will stay free, but maybe about 2% of them will convert to paying users. So now you've got 1 million paying users. Say on average they pay you $100 per year, and congrats, you've built a $100 million revenue business. Now you could probably quibble about some of the assumptions here. Is 2% the right conversion rate? Maybe you've seen more in your business. But as you get to that kind of scale, remember that you've got to open the top of the funnel, probably reach less qualified users, and your conversion rate's going to go down. And so you look at a great company like Dropbox, great product, great company, and they're roughly in that range. But whether it's 50 million users or 20 million users or 100 million users, nonetheless, the fact remains you have to reach a huge swath of users. Which then begs the question, what products are right for a freemium model? Well, it's got to be one that has, right, a total addressable market in the hundreds of millions of users. This is where a Dropbox comes in. Everyone has to store files. Maybe a SurveyMonkey. All of us at work at some point or another probably have been a part of a survey. I'd put Lucidchart in that category. We believe every knowledge worker should think and create and communicate more visually. But nonetheless, it requires a lot of scale from a user perspective. And so for your business, if your target market is more in the hundreds of thousands of users or less, or maybe even the low millions of users, a freemium model may not be the right approach. So maybe think about that a little bit. But nonetheless, we're all looking for scale, whether it's freemium or another model, and I think a lot of these lessons still apply. As I've looked at our own experience and worked with a lot of other freemium companies, most get there through some combination of these 3 channels, and they're not going to be surprising to you, right? Partnerships, demand gen, and virality. And so I want to talk briefly about these and some of the lessons we've learned along the way. Why don't we start with partnerships? From the beginning of Lucidchart, we integrated deeply with Google and Microsoft and Slack and Atlassian, and more recently with Salesforce and LinkedIn. And we did it because it gives us an opportunity to punch above our weight, right? To ride maybe side by side or at least on the coattails of some great other companies to reach an audience which we maybe couldn't otherwise do. But as I've been a part of a lot of these conversations over the years, I've realized it's sort of like we're all in the desert, right? We're building a company, and we're all thirsty for growth, just like we all chanted. We sometimes look at a partnership opportunity that seems to be forming in the distance. But I think the question in that moment is if I start taking the steps towards this, if I put in time and effort and money and mind share and start taking the steps, is it going to materialize? Is that going to materialize into an oasis of growth, or is it a mirage? And from my experience, this really comes down to three things. And I'll use a simple example of Lucidchart and Google Drive. In 2012, Google was set to launch Google Drive, right, to compete with Dropbox and Box and others. And they invited us to be a launch partner. And as we quickly evaluated the opportunity, it was clear there was a very tight product market fit. Because what it allowed was, if a user was going to go create their Google Doc or their Google Sheet or their Google Form, at the same moment they could choose to create a Lucidchart diagram. They could share it in the way that they were used to with Google Docs. And so it was a very clean product market fit. In fact, I think when they gave us the APIs, we used every single endpoint in some way that logically made sense and added value to our users. I think there's a good litmus test that if it takes you longer than about 10 seconds to explain the value of a partnership to a real customer, it's probably a mirage. Okay, the second one is business model fit. Similarly, let's go to the Google Drive story for a second. Google Drive was freemium, we were freemium. Why did that matter? Well, because it made the customer experience very frictionless between our two products. Because when a free user on Google Drive, they could instantly create a free account with Lucidchart and start to use it. A paid user could start a free account or vice versa. Now, over time, we've integrated with others who have different business models, who maybe aren't freemium. And while that's not necessarily a deal killer, you do have to think about the friction that comes in from a monetization perspective. Right? If you're having to do mental gymnastics to understand how your business model is going to fit with a partner, recognize your customers probably aren't going to do that, right? And that probably makes it a mirage. The last one, and maybe sometimes the most overlooked, is there a clear distribution path? Again, I've been part of a lot of these conversations where a lot seems to rely on co-marketing, or just generally the philosophy, if we build it and it's fantastic, they will come. But I think you really have to step back from the very beginning and say, is there a clear distribution path if we build a great product together? With Google, it was easy. They had the Chrome Web Store. They had the Google Apps Marketplace. They had a big megaphone. And so the distribution path was there. Too many times we've invested and realized at the outset there was no way to really let people know about it. And so as you think about partnerships, it could be a fantastic growth opportunity. It has been for us. That Google Drive opportunity, probably 1 million registered users. And the other ones I've named have been major contributors to our growth. But you've got to be able to separate what's a mirage versus what's actually an oasis when it comes to partnerships. Second, let's talk about demand gen. When I first joined Lucidchart, I had a little bit of background in SEO. And so, that I didn't have any other instruction other than to figure out and grow the business. So I started creating content and tried to rank for some of the high intent, high purchase type keywords that might exist. When someone searched for flowchart software or chart maker or something like that, I wanted to be there. And so very quickly started investing there, saw growth, and it became our #1 user acquisition channel very quickly. Now, after about a year or two, I had exhausted all the low-hanging fruit. I'd created content around all those sort of high purchase intent kind of keywords, and we had a decision point of what to do next. What channel do we invest in? And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs and as operators, we look at our competitors who maybe are further along than us. We look at our peers or companies we want to aspire to be like, and we see them doing all the things. We see them doing social, we see them doing search engine, we see them doing video, and we think to ourselves, if we want to compete with them, I've got to do that. If I want to be like them, I've got to do all the things. When in fact, I think nothing's further from the truth. Right? At that point, I decided to double down on what I knew was working, SEO. And yes, I had to go further up the funnel, and now I was creating educational content, rather than just targeting the easy, high intent keywords. But then again, we saw tremendous growth. And about every year or two, we have to rethink our strategy around SEO. We've layered in international, we've layered in focus around jobs to be done, around personas, or different angles around what type of valuable content we can put out there in the market. But every time we've been able to double down, go deeper, and extract more value out of a channel we know is working rather than skipping to the next thing and hoping that that will work. Now, of course, you have to continue to explore for tomorrow, and I'll talk about an example of that in just a minute. I think another thing to think about is investing in low-cost experimentation. A few years into the business, we'd been growing well, 100% year over year, and most of that was on the back of top-of-funnel growth, right? We were doubling the number of visitors we were attracting to Lucidchart every year. And as I looked at the coming year, I thought, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if year after year we can continue to just double the number of people that come to the website. And so I started looking at where are the other leverage points in the funnel, right? When a visitor shows up, what's their registration rate? You know, what's the registration to conversion rate? What's the conversion rate to retention rate? Right? These are high impact, high leverage points in the funnel. But mostly we had been so focused on top of funnel that we had ignored those. And so at that point, we put together a small growth team, a couple analysts, a couple engineers, and gave them the instruction to go after this opportunity, to find ways to add value to our customers at every point in the funnel so that we could also add value to the business. And we did onboarding, pricing, packaging, all sorts of different things. And over a few years, we more than doubled our conversion rate through these low-cost experiments in the funnel. So think about that as well as you get deep into demand gen. Okay, last, virality. I think there's a few ways where virality comes from. The most obvious is our product. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and particularly ones who are early on in their development and in their growth, and particularly those who are focused on freemium, where you have to, again, reach millions, tens of millions of users to build a big business. And I ask them the question about what is your growth path? And more often than not, what they start talking about is the sharing and collaboration features that they're building into the product and the virality that that's going to drive. Today, sharing and collaboration is probably built into almost every single one of our products. That is table stakes, in today's environment. And sharing and collaboration, as we all probably know, does not virality make. And so I think we have to be thoughtful, as we think about what is our growth path, that we're not fooling ourselves, that virality is going to create the rocket ship growth. Now, that's not to say to not invest in those areas. We invest very significantly in our sharing and our collaboration. We test, we work with customers, we try to make that as frictionless as possible. We've made some tremendous gains over the years. But I've also been realistic that this is not going to, for every user we bring in, they're probably not going to bring two with them. Most of us simply don't have products that way. There are a few that have sort of inherent characteristics, right? A Slack may be that way, a Zoom or a few others, but most of our products don't, I believe, have the inherent characteristics to be truly viral. So focus on this channel, grow it, but don't overestimate perhaps what is possible. Now that said, virality can come from a lot of different places, and one of them is our marketing. We had been focused on that demand gen machine that I was talking about earlier. Some of the more creative members of the team came to me and said, why can't we experiment a little bit with things that maybe put our product in front of people who otherwise wouldn't see it, right? They're not searching for anything that we're going to capture, even with the best SEO strategy in the world. And so we had built this culture of low-cost experimentation, and I said, okay, let's do it. And so one of the ideas that came out of that was to go after the world record for largest diagram. This is a highly coveted award if you're not familiar with it. And so the team came up with a campaign around this. And it focused on a guy named Walter. And I'll play a short video that explains it.
Walter goes for a walk, and you decide what happens next. Maybe Walter strolls across Mars, and maybe he runs into Albert Einstein. So add your sentence to Walter's story, and help set a world record, the world's largest crowdsourced diagram. A giant choose-your-own-adventure story written by the internet. And you could even win $1,000. So click to add your sentence to Walter's story.
Okay. So to create the world's largest crowdsourced diagram, we turned Walter over to the internet. And as you can probably forecast what happened here, we realized the internet can be a dark, nasty place. And very quickly, Walter was engaged in all sorts of unspeakable acts. And we'd been somewhat prepared for this. It wasn't totally unforeseen. We had built in some automatic filtering, we had some manual reviews, but we underestimated just how far people would go. And so, unfortunately, despite a great launch, a lot of attention, we had to pull this campaign because we just didn't feel comfortable letting it go on much longer. Now, around the same time, we had an engineer who came to us and said, I think we should use Lucidchart to explain some of the popular meme cultures. And I didn't know what this meant, and I don't think our creative team was all that familiar with it either, but especially his first idea focused around doggos. And so, we said, okay, why not? Recognizing good ideas can come from anywhere. Our engineer worked with our creative team to develop a quick 60-second video explaining doggos. And here's what emerged from that.
This is a doggo. A small doggo is a pupper. Here's a sad pupper. But a big old pupper, that's actually a doggo. Not to be confused with a big old doggo, because that's a woofer. But if it's just a small woofer, then it's actually a doggo. And do not pet a snip-snap doggo. Sometimes a pupper is a real small pupper, and that's a yapper. But then it grows up to be a big old yapper, and that's a pupper. Now, a big old woofer is no longer a woofer, it's a floofer. If it eats a humans, then it's a grizzlord. Stay away. A floofer won't eat a humans, and a small floofer is just a woofer. Duh. There are many, many doggo species, like common doggo, also known as doge. Special doggo is rare and very special. Other doggos could be a wrinkler, or a corgo, or a shoob, or a long doggo, or a puggo, or a party puggo. Doggos do things. A doggo in the water is an aqua doggo. A woofer in the water is a subwoofer. Lots of bork bork snarl makes for a heckin' angry woofer. A doggo in a costume is bamboozled. Sometimes they're doing me a frighten. This is Trash Boy. This is doggos making puppers. This is a very fast doggo running at incredible high speed. Diagram your doggos and anything else with Lucidchart.
Thank you. Now, some of you laughed. Others of you, I see the blank stares like, I don't get it. And that was my reaction the first time, but we trust our teams. We said, okay, let's run with it. And we put it up online and through social channels, and within about a day, it had reached 1 million views. It was just being furiously shared all over the place. Within a few more days, it was 5 million views. And clearly, we realized we had struck a chord here. And so we doubled down on what was working. We created lots of other videos around sort of the animals. We also did some on Fortnite, which worked tremendously well. We did one on Star Wars, which didn't. But we continued to experiment in this area. And it was interesting to watch this emerge with our team. Again, this all came from that culture of experimentation. And after even a little while at Adweek picked it up. Because over the last 18 months, these videos have racked up more than 250 million views with almost no advertising budget behind it. And we've been able to put the product, therefore, in front of 250 million people, many of them probably who wouldn't have been searching for us. Many of them who wouldn't find us through partnership or traditional demand gen. And so I think there can be real power in, again, creating that culture of experimentation and being willing to trust the team to try a few harebrained ideas. So in conclusion, as you think about growth, as you think about the opportunities and how to get to those big numbers, which you hope to, I hope you'll think about partnerships and separating out the oasis from the mirage. I hope you'll think about demand gen and doubling down on what's working today and putting most of our effort there rather than chasing all the things. But also creating a culture of experimentation at your companies that may well just surprise you as it has us. Good luck and thank you.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.